Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Sojka.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, Richard. Once again in the zone.
Stefan, you know, in the zone, there's no time zones in the zone. Did you know that?
Oh, that's amazing. I know. It's like people can listen to us any time of the day. In fact, in any part of the universe, you can listen to us with no bounds on time at all.
That's true. And in fact, people are listening to us right now, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 2 o'clock. And so on.
Yeah, and that's just Earth time.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's pretty good, and welcome back everybody, because we've had a wonderful time since the first launch of Zone 1.
Of Zone 1, and then we had a little Zone 2, which was Skeptics in the Pub. But thank you to everybody who's subscribing. We've got over 1,000 iTunes subscribers now, and we're just about to crack about 2,000 downloads altogether.
My goodness, that's going to make some of the other Skeptic shows extremely envious, and probably create a big sort of underlying hatred amongst the Skeptic community.
Oh, they're not envious yet.
No, it's great. But one thing I must say, it's really great that there are so many really cool Skeptic shows, and as we're just one contender.
Absolutely,
but it's also great to see so much skepticism in the world at the moment.
I think so, and they're all collecting into the zone. That's what I think.
They are. The zone is attracting them.
Those other shows, they'll be envious after today's episode.
That's right. Why?
We've got another live recording we did at DragonCon 2008. This time we're talking to Dr Ginger Campbell, who has her own podcast called Brain Science.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Pretty amazing brain stuff.
Brain science.
How the brain works and all that.
I've been thinking about that a bit lately. I was thinking, imagine if we evolved to a point where, the same way we pick up vision, but that we could actually pick up television with sensors that actually plug into our brains. We can just tune in the TV channels.
Wow.
It could happen
or radio or podcasts or something.
Hang on. So something's just coming in now. Oh my goodness! It's the Skeptic Zone number 2.
Oh, you're listening to it now.
I am.
It was
right
good,
now.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
It still is. It's great to be here, Richard. And what else we got?
Then we've got a new segment, Dr Rachie Reports. Dr Rachael Dunlop, a cell biologist, takes on quackery.
Oh,
and today she's going to kick off her new segment with live blood analysis.
Live blood analysis.
Analysis.
That sounds scary.
It does. Oh boy! So I'm looking forward to that, a new segment, and then that's followed by the regular Think Tank.
Oh, that's great fun! Nice little theme for that show too, isn't it? The Think Tank theme.
I like that. Stefan, I don't know where that came from. It just fell out of the heavens
magically into the zone.
I really like that, and people have been commenting on the song, the theme song, and then been downloading it for their telephones, their cell phones.
Oh no!
Yeah, if you go to the Skeptic Zone website, the skepticzone.tv,
right.
you can download our theme song as your
ringtone. That's pretty funny.
And I must say thank you to all the emails. It's been fantastic. I didn't expect to get so many, and so many people were saying how much they enjoyed the Think Tank section, especially.
It's great, isn't it? It's really cash, really laid back, and in a nice Aussie kind of pub club atmosphere.
It is, and today's episode is interesting because there was a mahjong tournament happening in the background.
Was that right?
We didn't expect that.
What happens there? Do people like yell out mahjong when they?
No, they make a lot of clattering noise, but you'll hear it later.
Okay,
all right.
Looking forward to that.
Well, we better get into it then. Let's dive into the zone.
Zone 3, off we go.
I think we can move on with our first guest for the afternoon, and I'd like to call up this lovely lady. Some of you may have heard of her. She has a... Yay!
Dr Ginger Campbell.
Dr Ginger Campbell. She has a article in the most recent issue of the Skeptical Inquirer, I believe. That's her theme music.
This wasn't scripted. Enough.
It was meant to be waltzing Matilda.
So, Ginger, welcome to the zone. I've got to get used to saying the new word, the Skeptic Zone.
Thank you, Richard.
So, you run the Brain Science podcast.
Yes, I've been doing it since December of 2006. Skepticality was one of my early influences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the wonderful things I like about your podcast is you're so diverse, because you also have an additional podcast on the side about books. And I must admit, when I first started thinking about getting into podcasting and vodcasting, one of the things that inspired me was to think, I don't just have to do X. I can go for my interests. I can go... I mean, you talked about Harry Potter, which just rocks as far as I'm concerned. It's fantastic.
Well, I have to mention the grande dame of podcasting, which is Mur Lafferty.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Mur.
Woo!
Mur was my influence on starting that podcast because let me back up for a second. The Brain Science podcast really came out of a early little short piece I did for the Sci-Fi Show, which is an Australian podcast.
Yeah.
And I had been thinking about podcasting but couldn't come up with what I wanted to do, and I Jason Rennie, who does the Sci-Fi Show, I'm sorry, I think I said the name of it wrong, the Sci-Fi Show. It's a combination of science fiction and philosophy. And on his discussion forum, there was always people talking about the brain, and mostly what they said was wrong, and I realized that there was a need for people to have better information, and I kept trying to tell him, well, this is a good book you could read, and this is a good book you could read, and finally he writes to me and says, well, you could do a book review for me. So I did On Intelligence by Jeff Hawkins, and he only gave me 5 minutes, which for me meant much editing. But once I did that, first of all, it got me over that whole hump of doing the first recording, which the first one is the hardest if you're interested in getting into podcasting. And I was just so jazzed by it. I said, this is it, because the brain, I won't ever run out of topics. But I was inspired by Mur because at that point she had I Should Be Writing and Geek Fu Action Grip. Geek Fu was a real, both of her shows are very personal, but I got the idea from her that if I was going to do the Brain Science podcast, that's not the only thing I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, as most of you, if you have ever heard my show, you know I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm an ER doctor, so I do the Brain Science podcast because it's something I read about and want to share with others. But I read other things like Harry Potter. Yeah. So I thought I'll have a second show, and that's where I'll put everything that doesn't fit. And when I first started, I tried to do one show every week. I was alternating. That didn't last very long, so no one knows that. And so if you went into my feed for Books and Ideas, you'll find that there's some really bad early episodes where I tried to say, this week I'm reading blah, blah, and stuff. And these were the worst books on Audible.com last year.
Oh, that's funny.
And I gave that up. But still, the great thing about Books and Ideas, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to mention it, is that it allows me to do anything. So I've done Harry Potter. I interview other podcasters. I have Eugenie Scott is my most recent episode. And she had just been interviewed by Swoopy, and of course Swoopy is a great interviewer. But Eugenie's also a great guest, and we were able to take the subject in a different direction when we talked. When I talked with her, we actually talked about how she works with Christians, because it's easy for skeptics to get kind of into a zone of this whole evolution of creation, and evolution versus creationism is a religion versus atheism issue, but it isn't. And
it's certainly something that Karen has focused on as well.
And so we talked about the work she's doing with churches and the work that she's doing with scientists who are also Christians, encouraging them to help their members to become better educated and to not fall for the right-wing, the right-wing propaganda that if you believe in God, you have to reject evolution. Because let's face it, most people aren't going to give up their belief in God. But that doesn't mean that they can't know accurate science. Yeah. And that's also the point of view I take on the Brain Science podcast. Yeah. So when I touch on something that might lead a skeptic to go into a very, this just knocks down that common belief, I will mention it, but I don't take a real, what I call radical skeptic position, because my goal is to have a show that everyone with a brain can listen to. And I don't intentionally try to alienate a person who has beliefs, because I think that the more you learn, then the belief part's going to take care of itself. If you're open-minded, your beliefs are going to change over time.
Well, it's never an easy thing, I know that. But just talking about Eugenie Scott, she was a very early guest on the Skeptic Tank when it was an audio show, in fact. And I have a lovely conversation with Eugenie Scott. She's always welcome on any podcast, I think. Are you familiar with Eugenie Scott and the work she does at the... Yes?
Yeah.
In fact, I hope to interview her probably next week. In person, because I'll be spending some time in the Bay Area. No, she's well worth having. If any of you want to start a podcast, ring up Jeannie Scott and interview her.
Where to start?
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what are some of the pseudoscience and fallacies and urban legends or myths that you've come across on your show? Are there any that stand out to you at all?
Well, probably... Can I say one thing about books and ideas first? Because I actually did an episode about the issue of free will. Someone sent me a book that she had edited called The Myth of Free Will. Actually, I should give her credit. Her name is Chris Evett, and she lives in Hawaii. And she has a book that has pieces by people like Daniel Dennett and Susan Blakemore. Is that right? Did I say that right? Blackmore. I always mispronounce her name and get email about that. And I reviewed her book on books and ideas, and one of the things that I said to her was, I have a problem if you're going to say scientifically that, because the way she defined free will in there was the idea that it comes from some mythical not part of the brain or body place, and I agree with that. But then some of the people would come to conclusions that said, well, if the traditional idea of free will is a myth, then personal responsibility disappears. The people who want to make their whatever is going on in their brain their excuse for why they did this or that. And so she actually let me write a little piece for the next edition, which came out a few months ago. I don't remember if I gave my piece a title, but she called it "My Brain Made Me Do It."
I don't think that would stand up in court somehow. No. Why did you rob the bank? Well, I didn't have any choice.
Well, actually, people are trying to do that. In fact,
really,
in my live podcast I'm doing next at 2:30 in the room next door, I'm interviewing two people, and we're going to be talking about brain imaging, and that is one of the issues.
So I actually came across a study, and this is in the Skeptical Inquirer to give them another plug, and it was conducted at the Max Planck Institute, and it was regarding these MRI studies that you're talking about, and it was a study to see if this technology could predict what people were going to do seconds before they do it. And so they found that they predicted with 70% accuracy that this was based in calculations that subjects were doing. So I'm wondering, do you think that if in any way brain science is going to give us some sort of realization of science fiction or of paranormal activities, just not in the way that we expect it to be?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the study, although I haven't seen the Skeptical Inquirer article, because basically it's a study that shows that as much as 10 seconds ahead of time, you can tell whether a person, I think, was it something like they were just going to decide to pick the lever on the right or the lever on the left, something simple like that. And they found that they could tell from the scan about 10 seconds ahead of time what they were going to do. And all that shows is that a lot of our decision making happens outside of our conscious awareness, which is something that I've talked a lot about on the Brain Science podcast. And it gets down to the idea, for me, just because something happens outside your conscious awareness doesn't mean you're not responsible for it. I mean, the whole point is we got frontal lobes that get to veto our decisions. If like you might have the urge to hit somebody when they say something to you, but most of the time you're not going to do it, right?
They do it to me.
Yes, but you deserve it,
But
Richard.
they actually decide to hit you.
Oh, I see.
And we get applause when it happens.
They don't veto.
Reinforcement.
No, they come up behind me and go, snap.
Yeah.
Counterexample.
Oh, dear.
Some people. I'm quite fascinated by the work of Susan Blackmore, and I heard a very good interview with her on. I probably was Skepticality or SG or on one of those great podcasts.
I know she's been on Skepticality.
Yeah,
it could have been the one. In fact, here's a brief ad. Skepticality. Yes, if you're not listening to The Zone, listen to Skepticality. Thank you. or any of the scientific skeptical podcasts. But yes, she has come to the conclusion from my memory of her interview that there's really nobody in there. You know what I mean? There's nothing deep inside you which is yourself. It's all a bit of an illusion. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah, she's come to somewhat, I think, what most people would consider a fairly radical interpretation. Partly, I think, because she combines the science with somewhat of a Buddhist view of it. Yes. You know, she kind of takes the science and puts the Buddhist view together and comes up with there's nobody there. My viewpoint is more like what we have is it's all of us. It's our body. It's our brain. It's just that most of it really isn't consciously available to us. And one of the topics, getting back to your original question about myths, let's take intuition and gut feelings, because that's one that's gotten several people lots of money writing bestsellers.
People confuse thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
Often as well.
Or people come to me often and say, what do you think about intuition? Thinking that it's part of the paranormal.
Yes.
Now, I don't think it is at all.
Absolutely. And up on my poster on the part you can't read, one of my most recent guests was Dr. Robert Burton, and I have some CDs of this episode if anyone would like to, if you haven't heard the show before. He wrote a book called On Being Certain, and he was talking about where he's a retired neurologist, and about where, you know, when you know the answer, you have that feeling that you know something, the feeling of knowing. Everyone has a
gut feeling,
you know, and his book is really is about that, and it's about the fact that that feeling of knowing is not as reliable as you might think. I mean, we assume, okay, I know, and that's one of the things that comes down to being a believer or a non-believer, is kind of where your brain circuits come down. Okay, and one of the things he points out is that you really can't control that. So when you're considering, say, someone who, no matter how many facts you show them, say, well, but I still believe in God, you need to remember that that's not they've decided to be stubborn, conscious decision. That's what's happening at lower levels. And he argues for more tolerance in both directions because of that. But he points out that intuition, gut feelings, is not anything mystical. It's coming from lower circuits in the brain.
Well, it's coming from experience.
I only call them lower because we don't have conscious. Well, it does, and a good example he gave was, he's a novelist. This is his first nonfiction book, and he said one time he was stuck writing his book. He couldn't come up with a solution to one of the parts, and then one day he woke up and he had the answer. Okay, a lot of writers will say, their muse gave them the answer, or the universe gave them the answer, or something like that. Well, he'd been thinking about it for, I think he'd said 6 months. So it was percolating around down there in his brain, not in some mystical place, and finally came out. But the other point he makes is that those ideas feel different because we don't have that sense of effort that we have when we are consciously thinking about something and we solve the problem. That feels different to us than when it feels like it popped out of nowhere. And that's, that gives us the sense that it could have come from someplace mystical.
Well, you've heard the expression, I'll sleep on it, for example.
Exactly.
And in my own personal experience, a number of times in my life, I've actually dreamt the correct answer to a problem I was having at the time, or the solution, or something came to me in a dream. But I'm fully aware it was because my mind was working furiously on the problem.
But see, you have to realize that that's your model of how it works. And a lot of other people, when that same answer, they sleep on that same answer, and their model of the world is that their muse or whatever they call it God even. Some people think the answers come from God. And that, because you can't tell with your conscious mind where it came from, so your model of how it works is directly going to influence what you think happened.
I have a question in regards to your own particular experience working in emergency wards. One of the things that I've always been intrigued by, people's attitude that if people have particular superstitious beliefs or particular tendencies, it can range from anything to, oh, they're just mentally ill, to, oh, they're just eccentric. Within the emergency ward, do you get occasional superstitions? I mean, people who are working there obviously under immense stress, they're highly qualified people, they're dealing with snap decisions, things have to get done, and yet I've heard that the Q word cannot be mentioned sometimes. Oh,
absolutely.
It's a quiet night. If you say that, boom, everything's gone. And there has been so many studies into whether or not... I thought
you were going to say the Q word is quack. So quack. Q word is quiet, huh?
Yeah, someone goes quack and suddenly everything goes crazy. No, not the quack word, but quiet. It's quiet. A quiet night, or even the idea of a full moon.
Yeah. These two things illustrate the fact that one of the ways our brains are wired is that we overweight our own personal experience. So as an emergency room doctor, I've had many a night in which there really seemed to be a correspondence between the increased number of crazy people and the fact that it happened to be a full moon. Now, I know logically that all the studies show that's not true.
Yeah.
But it feels true
that way.
And definitely on the don't say quiet. I mean, that's not the only one, but that's a good example. I mean, I have a friend who became a helicopter nurse because she enjoyed more excitement than the ER. And
it's for sick helicopters, is it?
No, Richard.
And so she, when she first started doing this, she was still working in the ER. And one of the things that the people that work on the helicopters are very good at is they're good at putting airways and intubating people when they are having trouble breathing. And so one day she was about to go off duty at like 5 or 6, and she said something like, I really wish we would have a code so I could intubate somebody. And I thought, I couldn't believe it. So surely, what goes on is she leaves.
Wow.
She leaves. After she leaves, that's what happens.
Wow.
Well, you see, that sticks in your head. You know, you might know logically that there's no connection, but
you're remembering
we still tease her about that.
And you remember the hits and you forget the misses as well.
Well,
exactly.
The thing about the full moon is I've had discussions with people, and it's like telling them their mother was not their mother or something like that, or the world is flat. I mean, people generally accept the fact that the full moon brings out crazy people and all sorts of hospitals and police and go nuts on a full moon, as it's entrenched as a
folkloric
absolute
belief.
fact.
There's another similar one amongst teachers, that if it's a windy day on the playground, the kids are going to go crazy.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it's windy day out. Oh, the kids are going to be totally uncontrollable. And it's like,
have you heard that one, anybody? It must be just in Australia.
Might be an Australian one, but I've had that one.
Because the wind blows
schools.
the other way in Australia. Maybe that's the...
and all the kids, calm down, perhaps. Yeah.
What's the one about ships taking off, and if you see a priest or something, it's bad luck?
Yeah. There's all sorts of ones across a variety of fields, and that's why emergency
gambling
not immune.
And my hospital, one of the hospitals I work at, has its own ghost whose name I can't remember right now. But
we're going to have to investigate.
He hasn't been seen recently, so seen, I guess is the wrong word.
So you haven't seen him then?
No, nobody's seen him, but it's
feel his presence.
But I can remember once about 15 years ago, I work in a very small hospital that doesn't have a morgue. So if somebody dies and you're waiting for the coroner to come get their body, it has to stay in the emergency room until they come. And I was working with a nurse who was very superstitious, and it was very late at night, so her and I were the only ones there. She was very uncomfortable with the idea that the patient's body was going to be down there with her alone until the I don't think it wasn't a coroner's case. It was just the funeral home came to get. So I mean, obviously people working in the emergency, probably would be more prone to such superstitious thinking, just because we see such extremes of behavior.
Yeah. Oh, I was wondering, this is something that was raised in another one of the pod science panels that have been going on. There's been so many going on, and I think if anyone else is interested in creating a show, definitely draw upon the resources that we have here at DragonCon with the Dragon Pod track. It was mentioned in one of the presentations, a panel you're on, issues with patients demanding certain treatments because they've seen it on television. And I know that you had challenged that and said, in fact, it has allowed for a greater understanding of your job. I was wondering if you might like to elaborate upon that.
Yeah, because I know most people probably weren't at that panel. Yeah, the subject of the show, House, came up because the other physician,
House, yes,
the other physician on the panel is an infectious disease specialist, and so they were kind of asking him about House, because House is. I'm not going to go there.
I can edit this later.
Yeah. Say what you like.
My husband loves the show.
Yeah.
I feel that, we have enough public relations problems as it is without somebody with as bad of a bedside manner as him.
It's sensationalized. Yeah.
But what I said was ER's been out 11 or 12 years. And I've been an ER doctor since 1992, so that goes a little bit further back. And I remember when ER came out, I was afraid that people were going to start coming into the ER and ask me, I was afraid that they were going to come in and expect to be diagnosed in 5 minutes. Because everything happens so fast on that show. And if you've ever really been to a real ER, you know everything happens really, really slowly.
It's triage.
And so that's what I was afraid of. That was people were going to have unrealistic expectations about how the system was going to work. But that isn't what happened. What happened was that before that, emergency medicine is a relatively young specialty, and in the old days, i.e. the 60s and 70s, if you went to the emergency room, you would see a resident who was still in training who was moonlighting to make some money. And so people would come in and they would ask me things like, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? I think I've gotten old enough that I don't look like someone that's ever, but when I was younger, that was very, annoying since I was finished with my training. So that's what I meant, was now people understand that emergency medicine is an actual specialty, and they come in and surprisingly, I think ER has made people have more confidence in what happens to them. I mean, we have people come in and say that they've come to see us because they feel we will do a better job than their own doctor, and that's kind of sad. But it's a reflection of the fact that in America anyway, physicians are the insurance companies are squeezing the physicians so tightly that they, in order to just keep their income even, are trying to squeeze more and more people into the schedule. Any of you that have been to the doctor, you know how it is. It feels like he's been there 30 seconds and he's gone. And the reason for that, and if you try to get an appointment because you're sick, you can't get one for 2 weeks because they're all booked up. And that's because they've already got their schedule totally overbooked to try to make up the difference for, if you ever look at your insurance statement, notice what the doctor actually gets paid compared to what it says that they billed. So, and Blue Cross just gets to arbitrarily decide that amount. Okay, so basically, when someone comes to see me in the emergency room, I get to spend more time with them than they get to spend with their own doctor. And so they will come. They will come to us for a second opinion, which is sort of sad and also disturbing since it's really not what we do.
Yeah.
Well, I always hoped that when I went to hospital, I'd get Hawkeye Pierce. Actually. And I found it quite interesting when Alan Alda did a series called Scientific American Frontiers, and he was in an operating situation, and he's saying, "Oh, is that what you do?" Oh, and like he had no clue, and I'm thinking, how can this be? I was so entrenched by the fact that Hawkeye Pierce was a great surgeon.
Hawkeye Pierce was definitely I graduated from medical school in 1984, so back then MASH was constantly being shown in reruns, and it was like a thing. Everybody watched it every day. It was a total inspiration to the people of my generation of doctors, for sure. and probably an influence on my wanting to be an emergency room doctor.
That's great. Well, thank you to Alan Alder. And thank you to Ginger Campbell for being our first guest this afternoon.
Thank you very much for your time.
We'd like to present you with the Great Skeptic CD2. This is 5,000 pages, 23 years of our journal, fully searchable. Thank you very much.
I wanted a T-shirt.
You can have one.
This is Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. Skeptoid is a short weekly podcast taking a critical look at the pseudosciences that infect popular culture. Whenever I'm not locked in the recording studio, I'm listening to The Skeptic Zone.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the first instalment of Dr. Rachie Reports. And this will be a short medical-based segment where I report on medical issues, alternative medicine, or healthcare products that may have caught my interest. And today I want to talk to you about one of my bugbears, live blood imaging or live blood analysis. Some of you may have heard of this. The concept is quite simple. Your finger is pricked, a drop of blood placed on a slide, and then viewed on a microscope which is projected onto a computer monitor. And practitioners claim to be able to make judgments from the shape of your blood cells and the contents of your blood about the state of your health. They claim to see all manner of things from bacterial, fungal and viral infections, increased acidity in the blood, undigested proteins and fats, evidence of hormonal imbalances and atherosclerotic plaque, which is all part of a scheme to sell you their magic potion, commonly in the form of overpriced vitamin powders or supplements. And I think even Wikipedia got it right this time with their description of live blood analysis as an unestablished diagnostic test promoted by some alternative medical practitioners who assert it can diagnose a range of diseases. There is no scientific evidence that live blood analysis can detect any disease state, and it has been described by an expert on complementary and alternative medicine as a fraudulent means of convincing a patient that they are ill and require treatment with dietary supplements. And this quote comes from Edzard Ernst, who is the world's first professor of complementary medicine at the University of Exeter and the University of Plymouth in the UK, who recently published the book Trick or Treatment with UK-based science writer Simon Singh. So he knows his stuff. So how does it work or not work? Well, live blood analysis practitioners refer to these microscopy images of your blood, and then they try to find a match to your sample, and then loudly proclaim they have a cure for you, usually in the form of these expensive supplements. Now, some of the diseases they claim they can treat are generally unrelated. Some of the more interesting ones I came across when I was doing some research for this include free radical damage to the blood cells, undigested proteins and fats, as I just mentioned, but this is not an illness, evidence of smoking. Now, this is interesting because, damn, I had no idea I was a smoker until you did my live blood analysis. Alcohol, well, just alcohol, do you mean? Too little, too much? God, I could use a drink right now. Stress. Now, atherosclerotic plaque caught my interest because I work in heart disease research and nobody told me. We've spent decades looking for blood-borne biological markers that could indicate the presence of plaques, and I had no idea this existed. So obviously I'm wasting my time. Now, prices vary for a consultation, and the most expensive I came across was $375 for the initial visit, and then $175 for the follow-up to see if the treatments worked. Now, here's the trick with alternative medicine peddlers. They will pepper their spiel with scientific-sounding words to make their claims appear more credible. Now, I'm going to go into this a little bit more in a minute, but Brian Dunning talks about this as a red flag in his fantastic presentation, Here Be Dragons, which is an introduction to critical thinking. And if you search YouTube or go to Skeptoid.com, you'll find this video from Brian Dunning. But here's a classic piece of what I mean with peppering with scientific jargon drawn from a random website. So, for our live blood cell analysis, Dr. Joe Bloggs, not Doctor's real name, uses a sophisticated microscope called an RTM, which is the Richardson Technology Microscope. And this microscope is the same one used in places like the Scripps Centre and the Pasteur Institute in France, and is the only one available in the world to be used for live blood cell analysis. Now, I'm sure this is probably true. Richardson Technology Microscope are legitimate microscope manufacturers, and also dark field microscopy is a valid scientific tool. But that doesn't mean that they are being used for real science in this case. In fact, I have a microscope in my house. It sits on my bookshelf and looks sciencey. Perhaps I need to put a sign on my letterbox saying, "Ooh, microscope upstairs, scientific stuff, woo, only $100 to see it." And here's another classic red flag. Search any of these sites, and live blood analysis is not the only culprit here. You'll find dozens and dozens of testimonials from satisfied customers. Now, this is very common practice by woo practitioners, but testimonials do not constitute evidence. The most obvious thing that comes to my mind is, how do you know they are real? Couldn't they have easily been written by the person themselves, or their wife, or their daughter, or randomly generated from a website like testimonialsforquacks.com? Not a real website. And unfortunately, Australia is not immune. Richard Saunders and myself went undercover to the Mind Body Wallet Festival in Sydney earlier this year and spoke with a live blood analysis proponent. Now, I should explain that I am a cell biologist. I work in heart disease research. I have 8 years of education with a PhD from the University of Sydney, so I'm pretty familiar with physiology and scientific terminology. Richard, on the other hand, is a science junkie and a member of our cheer squad, but essentially a layman with respect to jargon. And of course they use this to their advantage. And as her explanation progressed, I noticed a pattern of this peppering with misplaced scientific jargon, almost as if she'd put a whole lot of scientific words in a hat and pulled them out at random. And at one point she pulled out SOD. Now, SOD is an enzyme that I'm quite familiar with, and in fact I wrote a section in my thesis on SOD, and it's an abbreviation for superoxide dismutase. It's an enzyme, an antioxidant enzyme, which detoxifies free radicals. So when I asked her to explain this further, I remember her explanation quite well. She said, "Oh, it's super dismutase I can't remember, it's been a long day." So now why the hell was she dropping SOD into a sales pitch for very expensive green barley powder escapes me, but probably for that reason there was no context. She also tried to convince us that the shape of your blood cells on the slide could indicate if you had the correct ratio of magnesium to calcium in your body. She told us that the cloudy feeling you sometimes get in the mornings is a result of an imbalance in this ratio, but of course their special powder will fix all that. I had previously attributed the cloudy feeling in my head to all the champagne I consumed the night before, but I'm willing to accept that. And at a debrief beer in Chinatown afterwards, I asked Richard what he had made of her spiel, and he agreed it sounded pretty impressive. He didn't understand all the scientific jargon, but that made it sound even more legit. And this is deceitful, to say the least. So if you're still unsure as to the efficacy of live blood analysis, check the fine print and sometimes the not so fine print on the websites of practitioners. Here's one I came across during my research. Dr. Blogs does not diagnose, prescribe or cure. He simply observes the living tissue in your body, makes recommendations about lifestyle, and gives the body what it needs to heal itself. And this statement appeared in bold type on the homepage. Nothing on this site should be construed as medical advice. Seek the services of your physician for medical advice. So that's pretty convincing that I don't think this treatment's doing much. And on top of that, there are ongoing regulatory issues surrounding live blood analysis, with unaccredited labs in the United States conducting the procedure. In 1996, the Pennsylvania Department of Laboratories informed 3 Pennsylvanian chiropractors that what they refer to as nutritional blood analysis could not be used for diagnostic purposes unless they maintain a laboratory that has both state and federal certification. And in fact, their laboratories weren't accredited. On top of this, as way back as the mid-1980s, the National Council Against Health Fraud watched 3 practitioners demonstrate live cell analysis at health expositions. The gentleman that observed this noted that none took precautions during the preparation of the slides to prevent the blood from drying out or clotting. Secondly, they failed to clean their microscope slides carefully between patients, which meant that dirt seen under the microscope could be misinterpreted as blood components. And some of the patterns one practitioner saw resulted from his microscope being out of focus and disappeared when it was adjusted properly. In addition to this, in Australia in April 2008, a naturopath who practiced live blood analysis was banned for life, following multiple charges for advertisements which contravened the Fair Trading Act. And in 2007, he was acquitted of manslaughter after a 37-year-old man with chronic kidney disease died after suspending his conventional treatment to follow the naturopath's regimen. So essentially, live blood analysis is a front for selling you some expensive cocktail of herbs or vitamins. In Australia, the test costs about $150, but then the potions are much more, in some cases $105 per kilo for green barley powder. And of course, you are not cured with just one course. This is a repeat business venture, and you need to return for a follow-up visit to demonstrate that you are cured. I have recently discovered the existence of dead cell analysis and hair mineral analysis too, but that's another time for Dr. Rachie Reports. Thank you.
The first time that I had an opportunity to wear a Stop Sylvia Brown t-shirt was at the Australian Skeptics National Convention held in Melbourne back in 2006. This year I wore a Stop Sylvia Brown t-shirt again, but this time it was at Dragon Con when I was presenting along with other members of the Skeptic Zone. This time, however, it wasn't that the site had been launched. It was about how the site's creator, Robert Lancaster, had just suffered a stroke and was going through recovery. In order to help with the financial costs of recovering from a stroke, the friends of Robert Lancaster have made a site, skepticsunite.com, where they will be selling pens, fridge magnets, caps, and even shirts like mine. The Stop Sylvia Brown logo will be featured, along with another special little character, the JREF Origami Pegasus, which was created by our very own Richard Saunders. To help Robert Lancaster continue to stop Sylvia Brown, head to the site skepticsunite.com.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
And thank you to Jim Wilshire for that lovely announcement into the think tank. And here we are again, back in our favourite club. And that funny noise you can hear in the background is actually a mahjong contest. Yes, the room is full of people doing mahjong. It's quite strange. I'm here with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello, Richard.
And Amanda Rose.
G'day.
And Michael Wolloghan.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. We're here, of course, in the think tank. And we're going to do some thinking and drinking. Cheers.
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 Don't spill any on the microphone, that's all I ask.
Try not to, Richard.
Now, Rachel, I see you're eager. You are eager there with your notes in your hand.
The Jewish community on the North Shore in Sydney have applied to build what they call an eruv, which is a virtual wall in St Ives, a suburb of the North Shore. Because apparently under Jewish law it's forbidden to push or carry objects beyond the private home on the Sabbath day and during holy festivals. So this means that parents are often able to, they can't push their babies around in prams, and if they have elderly or disabled relatives, they can't push them in wheelchairs either. So by building this virtual wall, this will give them an area outside of which they are allowed to push things.
This was reported in today's paper, right?
This was reported in the Sydney Morning Herald last week.
Oh, right, okay.
So, in fact, there is already a partly constructed eruv around St Ives, but what they want to do is just use currently existing telegraph poles and cables and then just string wire between them to demarc the area. So they've put in a development application, and not surprisingly, the St Ives residents are not particularly happy about this. So it hasn't been approved at this point, but some of the residents believe it will block their views and create a Jewish ghetto.
It's a bit heavy. I don't know what to say about that. That's a very strange one.
I've not heard of this before. I did know that you weren't allowed to push things on the Sabbath, but I didn't realise that you could get around that law by building an eruv.
Being Orthodox.
Yeah.
The Orthodox community who are following those. So I think the ghetto comment's rather over the top.
That's a direct quote from someone saying.
They're not. It's not going to be anything that wouldn't be happening anyway. It's only the people who are in that area already.
And wouldn't impede on anybody else, really, would it?
Well, not really, because according to this article, it's going to use existing poles and just add wire. So really the only thing that's going to happen is there'll be wire strung between poles to indicate where this area is.
You said the ghetto thing. I actually find that reasonably offensive. I mean, given the historical connotations of the term Jewish ghetto to carry on about... I mean, there may well be very good development reasons for opposing the wires and so on. But.
Well, all I know is this article says that St Ives residents say it will block their views and create a, in quotes, Jewish ghetto.
Sounds like a media beat-up.
St Ives residents need to chill out.
Well, it's interesting, actually, because this article appeared on about page 12.
I saw the letters. I didn't see the article. I saw there were some follow-up letters.
Yeah, it wasn't very well publicised. It was sort of stuck in the back part of the paper. But I just thought it was interesting. I didn't realise that there was such a thing.
I know that they have already in Bondi. They have traffic lights that are automatic that you don't have to push. You just wait there and it changes rather than push the button and so on.
To overcome that.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's the same as this, but...
That's very interesting. I wonder if listeners in other parts of the world would have similar experiences in their cities. Maybe they can write in and tell us.
Sure, yeah.
If you visit our website, skepticzone.tv, and go to the About Us, you can email each of us individually.
Yes, you can, Richard.
Yeah.
We all have our own individual email addresses on that page.
Yeah. So thanks, Rachel. That's a slightly unusual but interesting story. Michael, what do you have for us?
I have a story about the American musician Prince.
Oh, yes?
Prince has been currently promoting a book about himself called 21 Nights.
Wasn't he Prince and the artist who was known as Prince, and then he was some sort of squiggle, and now he's Prince again?
That's right.
Okay, cool.
Is he back to Prince now, is he? Because, he was the artist formerly known as Prince. Then
he is back to Prince now.
And he's 50 this year, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Michael Jackson is.
So is Prince, right?
That's right.
Really?
And Madonna. Yeah.
I'm not sure about Madonna.
Yeah, she's 50. She turned 50 the other day. In fact, that was a trivia question we got, didn't we?
Did we?
When we won trivia a few weeks ago.
Probably.
Anyway, sorry, Michael, keep going.
Well, you may know that Prince became a Jehovah's Witness in 2001.
I didn't know that.
And he goes house to house to preach about his faith.
What?
He told USA Today this week that he is often chased through the streets by his fans as he tries to convert them to the Bible.
Shouldn't he be running towards them in that case, rather than away from them, if he's trying to convert them?
You make a good point.
I'd be immensely impressed if Prince came to my door. But he is so devoted to his faith that he even takes the Bible to business meetings.
Where did you get this information from?
Well, this is because he's been promoting this book. He's been doing a lot of interviews and a lot of talks relating to this book and CD which is coming out. But one of the things I didn't know is he supports intelligent design.
I didn't know that either.
He actually does support intelligent design. And this is a man that's won 6 Grammy Awards and an Academy Award.
Well, there you go. He must be on the ball then.
Well, I was wondering why he would, be praying to Jesus. And I came to the conclusion he must pray to Jesus because he wants to be taller.
It's okay. On his records, he's quite tall.
Jesus isn't listening, clearly, because he's not growing.
Well, that's something I didn't know.
So the fact that he supports intelligent design, has that come out throughout the course of his interviews for his book?
That's correct.
Okay. It's disappointing.
Well, last time we were discussing a star in the think tank, it was Pink.
Pink and Scientology. You haven't heard anything more about that, Michael, have you?
No, I haven't, but I did read some information relating to Swedish taxpayers, and they've been indirectly supporting the Church of Scientology through local government contracts given to front organisations with ties to the group.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
According to a SVT documentary, 156 of Sweden's 290 local councils have contributed more than 1.4 million to the Scientology movement.
And what have they got in return? Like when you say front organisations, are those organisations actually doing something for the money?
Well, their front groups are Narconon, which is a supposed drug rehabilitation group.
Oh yes, I've seen them here in Sydney, yeah.
And they do have other front groups that they are able to obtain money from the government in that specific regard.
Has that now stopped?
No, it's currently taking place.
I see. In Sweden?
That's right.
That surprises me because the Scandinavians are usually pretty sensible people, aren't they, in general?
Sure, I agree.
I mean,
the Scientology getting everywhere.
True, but the Scandinavians are, I think, well, at least a large part of Sweden are atheists, aren't they? Or declare themselves to be atheists?
They're pretty secular up there, although officially it's Lutheran. Actually, I'm sure a listener will correct me. It is a large, heavily Lutheran. I don't know if that's official or not. Mm-hmm. Okay, you people listening in Sweden, please write in and correct me.
Let us know, yeah. And I also believe that university is free in Sweden. Taxes are obviously very high in most parts of Scandinavia, but education is either very cheap or...
It's a lovely place. Free. I was there in about 1992, I think.
In Sweden?
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
I've only been to Norway. I haven't got to Sweden. I actually was watching, at the gym, I was watching cable. There was a show from E. It was called E Investigates, which I kind of... It's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? E, entertainment, investigates. But in any case, it was about diet fads. And they were doing a story about the couple from Atlanta, Georgia, who were vegans, and they had a young child, and they decided to put their child on a vegan diet. And after 6 weeks, the child died from starvation. And they were both jailed for life and charged with first-degree murder and child abuse. And it was really tragic because they obviously didn't mean to kill their child. They obviously loved their son, but they just didn't seem to have the concept that you can't put a child on a diet with soy milk and lentils without it suffering. And in fact, the sister of the guy who's in jail was talking to Ian, saying that every time she visits her brother, he says, well, I didn't murder him. I loved my son. But I guess it goes back to what you and I were talking about last week too, with what's the harm. Yeah. Again, you know, people just don't seem to have a clue about that.
And I will always say to our listeners, please visit what'stheharm.net.
But I have to tell you, Richard, I almost fell off the treadmill and I laughed so loud. I was lucky I was the only one at the gym, because one of the diets that they were talking about was a detox diet. And the woman was saying that all you can eat is fresh fruit and vegetables, and you have to juice everything. So for 21 days you just eat juice of... And actually they showed a shot of her making this wonderful smoothie, and there was a shot of half an onion and some beetroots. I thought, oh yum, I want a smoothie of that. Yeah. But also as part of this diet, apart from just drinking the juice, it's also very important to undergo colonic irrigation.
Oh, yeah.
And ear candling. So they actually had a shot of this woman doing ear candling on a patient, and that's when I almost fell off the treadmill. And the third thing is the detox for your feet, you know, the water bath, where the water goes all brown. Yes. And that's supposed to be cleansing your liver.
Through your feet?
Through your feet, absolutely.
That sounds about as real as it sounds, quite frankly. Now, I'm glad you mentioned ear candling.
Are you, Richard?
Those people out there who used to listen to the Skeptic Tank and the Tank podcast, watch the Tank podcast, would know our opinion on ear candling, and you can have your very own Skeptic Zone No Ear Candling t-shirt.
Yes, you can.
You can. Visit our website, skepticzone.tv, and follow the links to our online store there with the t-shirts.
There's one that says homeopathic medicine, there's nothing to it or in it. I quite like that one. I particularly do like the no ear candling one, because that's one of my bugbears, and I think it's one of yours as well, isn't it?
I must tell the listeners that you and I, a couple of months ago, we went to a chemist for some reason. I just can't remember why. We were shopping or something, and they were selling ear candles.
They were.
But of course, we had to be loud about it.
Yeah, we did.
And we didn't say ear candles, we said nose candles. In loud voices, we were saying, have we got enough nose candles at home? Is it, you know?
Do you know how much those things cost?
No.
$16.95.
So how many?
I think it's maybe 4 or 5.
Good grief.
How many do you need per ear in a session?
6 at least.
I don't know. But they're just... I've just finished reading Simon Singh's book, Trick or Treatment, which I think we're going to talk about further at some point.
We will. It's a brilliant book, yeah.
It is brilliant. But he mentions in there that the only thing ear candles are good for is depositing wax in your ear and or setting fire to your house. And I have to agree with him. Now, I happen to have some astrology with me, Richard.
Good. I'm glad someone does.
So if it's any of our listeners out there, if it happens to be your birthday this month, I'm just going to read out your star sign, and this will be the stars for Virgo, which is September to 30th of October.
Oh, yes.
Now, you must stop watching TV and start watching the radio. Remember, a watched pot does in fact boil. You can treat your boils with cream. There are so many omens and some women's that are around your aura, or maybe not. No lucky nothing for you this month. Now, these are written by a very well-known astrologer, Orb Fontal, and it's entitled Very Scientific Astrology. Astrology.
Astrology, yes.
Astrology, yes. And, in fact, I might just read one more while I'm here.
What does Pisces say?
Pisces?
Yeah, I'm Pisces, I need to know.
Okay, Pisces. The sign of the fish. Look out for hooks, lines and sinkers. Don't bait anyone or you'll be reeling. If you rock the boat, you'll find yourself up the creek without a paddle. There are no lucky numbers for you this month, as I sold them to a Virgo.
Now, where did you get those stars, Rachel?
Oh, look, I found these in an old magazine from Mystery Investigators, Richard.
Really?
Now, I think you and I have something to do with Mystery Investigators, don't we?
Yeah.
This is from 2005, magazine number 3.
No, I mean, Orb Fontal will have to write some more, I think.
Orb Fontal will have to write some more, yes. They're very funny.
If you want to find out your astrology, there's a free download on the Mystery Investigators website, mysteryinvestigators.com, and just download the magazine and you can read your funny star signs.
I'll just read one more, Richard, because it's my birthday in a month or so. In fact, it's yours as well.
It is,
We're both born in November.
Yeah.
So we're Scorpios, according to this astrology. Your lucky number can be worked out by using the science of numerology, and your birth date numbers together. Add your birth date numbers together, which will give you your life number. Add this to the current year to get your past life number. Add these together with your birth date again, and that's it. Your lucky number is 2. Richard, I think you missed your calling.
I think not me. It's Orb Fontal.
Sorry, Orb Fontal missed his calling.
Yes.
I think he did.
Oh, I tell you what. While we're thinking about funny things and great times, let's give a big shout out to Tim and Carrie Iwin. They're in Minnesota, who are big fans of the show.
They are big fans of the show.
Really big fans of the show.
Yes.
Tim and Carrie, thank you for listening. We really appreciate it.
Hello, Tim and Carrie.
Hello, Tim, Carrie.
Thanks for the support. Well, I thought this was a really funny story, so I thought I'd have to share it with you. A pastor in Kenya caused a stir when he removed a woman's panties from his pocket and used it to wipe sweat from his face in the middle of a sermon.
I'm glad you said from his pocket.
Apparently he thought he was using a handkerchief to clear his forehead of sweat as he preached under a blazing sun. It later emerged that the pastor, who is married with 1 child, had spent the previous night with a member of his congregation after lying to his wife that he was attending night-long prayers and would therefore be away from home.
Oh.
I thought that was classic.
What a faux pas. So how did it all come out then? Just
came out in the wash. I don't know.
Poor guy. Well, there you go. I mean, you shouldn't be carrying around women's panties in your pocket anyway, should you? Was that your first mistake?
Yeah, no.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not the first mistake in this instance, but that's probably not very smart either, is it?
Gee, how can you comment on stuff like that?
Okay, I'm not going to say anything else. Just leave that one there. I don't know if I want to talk about this. It's about herpes.
I think it's very appropriate.
After what you just said.
Herpes? You've got a story about herpes?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
There was a study published this week in the Journal of Virology.
On the Journal of what?
general virology.
Virology?
Virology, yes.
Go ahead.
The study of viruses is known as virology.
I put my issue down somewhere, I just can't find it.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to the Journal of General Virology, Richard?
I'm sorry, listeners. I'm sure you all do, but...
Anyway, this is a story about a new strain of herpes. Well, it's not actually a new strain. It's still herpes simplex virus 1, which is known as HSV1, and that's the one that causes common cold sores. So it's been a problem for sumo wrestlers, apparently, because they're vulnerable to a more virulent strain, which is contracted through grappling their opponents. Now, this has become a problem because 2 of the wrestlers have actually died as a result of their infections.
What?
Yes, I know. It does sound surprising, doesn't it? So this is a variant of HSV1 strain of herpes. It's known as BGKL, and it spreads more efficiently and causes more severe symptoms than other strains. So it's highly infectious, as is HSV1 when it's cold sores as well. So, but it means that players who have these blisters have had to be taken out of competitions to prevent it from being passed on to other wrestlers. And it's been, it's actually known as herpes gladiatorum or scrumpox. The common name is scrumpox.
What a pleasant name.
And fever, headaches, and infection of the lymph nodes can result from this from infection with this BGKL strain of HSV1. So
you're a fountain of knowledge.
It's a very big problem, Richard.
And what has that got to do with skepticism?
It's medicine, which is science, which is skepticism.
That's a pretty tenuous link, I must say. Oh. Let me paint a picture for you, listeners. Rachel just leant back to laugh and she whacked her head against the wall.
It's not a skeptical story, it's a medical story.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to read your stars again?
Oh, you'll like this one.
Oh, yes.
A church service for the Dutch Christian nudists has been cancelled this weekend after hostile reactions from other more conventional worshippers.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
A church...
That's what the bloke in the story before should have said. The Kenyan Christian nudists. That should have been his excuse. This is the Dutch Christian nudists, did you say?
That's right.
I'm sorry, why is it being cancelled?
Well, because a lot of the more conservative Christians don't agree with it. But the Dutch nudist Christians held their first service in June, where a clothed priest presided over a nude congregation of 80 people in a region of the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, that's cheating.
Yeah, that is cheating. Is that a big movement, Michael? Are they particularly influential? Oh, stop it. That wasn't an innuendo.
We're finding
well, it might be expanding.
They're expanding, are they? I see.
Amanda's the only one here who's keeping a straight face. Almost.
Did you hear this week that the Vatican has gone solar? Solar power.
I saw that on the news. They're getting energy from the heavens.
They are getting... Well, I'm surprised that they need to get it from the sun. But can't they get
or the Father, wherever they can get it.
They have had installed something like 1,200 solar power panels on the top of one of the buildings within Vatican City. Yeah. Fully donated by the German company that did the installation. And it was about €1.5 million, I think.
Wow.
Was the cost.
Wow.
But then, Pope Benedict is from Bavaria.
He is.
So I guess the Germans hold him close to their hearts, do they, Richard?
They do, I'm sure they do.
You spent some time in Germany?
I did. Hello to everybody listening in Germany. Hello.
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 But you weren't in Bavaria?
Oh, yeah.
You were?
Yes, you bet. I love it down there. It's great.
Oh, it is lovely.
It's a beautiful place.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful
area.
place. Absolutely stunningly beautiful. Yeah. And the people are friendly and warm. They say Gruskot.
Gruskot?
Gruskot, which means Greek God, which is saying hello. Yeah.
I see. Cheers. Greek God.
Greek God.
Great.
No, Greek.
Oh, Greek. Greek.
Gruskot. Gruskot.
Greek God.
It's just a way of saying g'day. Hello.
Hail Apollo.
It's a Hail Apollo. It could be the same thing, yeah. On that interesting note of Grüß Gott for you people in Germany, I'd like to thank Dr. Rachael Dunlop, Amanda Rose and Michael Wolloghan for joining me once again in the think tank, even though it's a bit strange because we've got a Mahjong tournament happening right behind us.
Now, we've had quite an international show today, Richard, so I think we should all say goodbye in a different language.
Sayonara.
Tschüss. До свидания.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Well done, everyone.
Although tschüss and auf Wiedersehen is the same language.
Well, yeah, but I'll let that pass.
We'll let that pass. Thank you, and we'll see you all again soon in the think tank.
Thank you, everyone.
Till next time.
Bye.
Young skeptics, those of you in Australia and around the world, don't be fooled by tall stories and impossible claims. Head to www.undeceivingourselves.com for easy-to-read information about critical thinking. Also find out about the Western Australian Skeptics Awards for Young Critical Writers. www.undeceivingourselves.com.
Richard, it's another fabulous zone. You've done a great job again.
I don't want to get out of the zone. I'm so into the zone after that episode. But I tell you what, the next episode's going to be interesting.
Oh, yes. Isn't it a big convention coming? Another convention.
Another convention. I spend my life going to convention. We have the Australian Skeptics National Convention. In fact, I'm there right now as I'm speaking.
Is that right?
The way the internet works, yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? All
Kicks
the time.
off on the weekend, yeah.
Okay, so what's going to happen there?
We're going to be running around interviewing lots of people who are speaking at the Australian Skeptics Convention. I'm meeting up with our reporter Kylie Sturgis from Perth. She's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Rachel Dunlop's going to be there. So we might do a sort of a mini think tank on the road. We'll see.
Why not?
We'll see.
In Adelaide too. It's a nice laid-back sort of town down there, and you'll probably I think you'll have a good time.
I hope so.
Lots of churches there. You could probably go ghost hunting around.
I think we might. That's a great idea, Stefan. I think we might try that out.
Go for a ghost hunt.
Why not?
Yeah, so thanks again for another great episode. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in once again. Look, it's always good material, and it's almost like a limitless supply of material for skeptic shows, isn't there? Because there's so much crazy stuff going on.
I hope so. As producer, I sincerely hope so. Yes.
That's right.
Thank you once again, Stefan.
No worries. It's great to be here. We'll see you next time.
Bye now.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone, a miracle of technology.